Okay guys, in this video I'm going to walk through the graphing quadratic functions assignment that we worked on today, Friday, May 25th in class. So if you were gone today, this will definitely help you out. If you were here, I think this will also definitely help you out. Good review and explanation on how we can sketch the graph of these quadratics. So on the board is number 1, or on your screen is number 1. I need to find two things in order to be able to graph these. First thing I need to know is the roots. Okay? Second thing that we're going to find in a little bit will be the vertex. Okay? Finding the roots. I have essentially two options. There's a third, but we're going to focus on two options. I can factor, or I can use the quadratic formula. Now, most students tell me that the quadratic formula is harder or more time-consuming, more complicated, whatever, than factoring. So, I always just start off and say, hey, can I factor this? If I can, let's do it and be done. If not, then I will use the quadratic formula. Okay? So, first thing, notice I put it equal to 0. Remember, when we're on the x-axis, and I'll draw a picture here quick. When we're on the x-axis, so when I'm right here, my y-coordinate is 0. That's what I want to know. When is this going to be equal to 0? So my y-coordinate is 0, so therefore what x-coordinate will I be at? Alright, so if I factor, I got x and x, multiplies to a positive, adds to a positive, so positive, positive, and then what two numbers multiply to 5, add to 6, we know that to be 5 and 1. Zero product property, two things, these two binomials multiply to get 0, so one of them has to be 0. So whatever x values we use to plug in there, I got to use x values that will make this thing equal to 0. Let me fix that quick. And then this guy over here, x equal to -1. So this quadratic, this parabola, is going to cross my graph at -1, -5. So I just kind of sketch what that graph's going to look like. Not really to scale, don't have graph paper up or anything like that, but that's where I'm at. Now, if factoring this didn't work, I would use quadratic formula, and I'll do an example of that next. But factoring did work. So then I look at my graph here, my two roots. Halfway in between those is my line of symmetry. So my parabola is symmetrical. This dotted line here, which I'm not going to leave there necessarily, but the dotted line is going to cut my parabola right down the middle. Okay? Now, I don't know at this point if my vertex is up here, if it's here, maybe it's down here. I just know it's somewhere on that line of symmetry. Okay? So, this line is right in the middle. This was -1, this was -5. So then I say, well, what's halfway between -1 and -5? And we find that to be -3. So the x-coordinate of my vertex, x, is going to equal -3. I'm going to find the y-coordinate by plugging -3 into my original equation. Sorry about that, the pen's dragging. -3 squared is 9 minus 18, because 6 times -3 is -18, plus 5. 9 minus 18 is -9, plus 5 gives me a -4. Okay? So, before I graph those, let me clarify one thing. It came up here today with the student. My vertex coordinate is going to be -3, -4. That's an important coordinate I need to graph. The roots look a little bit different because there's only one number, and that was confusing, and I totally understand that. So understand and realize that my roots, my coordinates are -5, 0, and -1, 0. So these are actually the three coordinates that I need to graph. Okay? So I go to -3, down to where about -4 would be, and then now I don't connect with a straight line, but I'm just going to connect with a of a curve, what a parabola would look like. And that is my answer. I sketched that graph. Okay? Realize I don't need the dotted line on there. That doesn't have to be there. I was just using that for demonstration purposes. And then, like any good student, you're probably sitting there wondering, well, that's cool, but how do I check to make sure my answer is right? Well, let's just graph it. You're at home. There's a number of ways we can graph it. I'm going to suggest that you use Desmos. So Desmos online graphing calculator, super powerful. They even have an app for your phone. So you can go and search in your app store for Desmos, download it, and it works super well. So x squared plus 6x plus 5 was my graph. And that was the one I had. It looks like this. It crosses here at, I got to recognize my scale, -2. So this would be -1. Crosses at -5, 0. And my vertex is -3, -4. Okay? Notice Desmos even labels those points for you as important points. Okay? So some of you might have just realized, oh hey, so I can just graph all of these on Desmos, plot my points, and I have my assignment done. Of course. There's lots of ways you could get to the answer, but the focus is, did you learn anything? Okay? So we really need to be able to do these by hand because that's our focus on our learning goal, and it'll be a question on your test if that's a motivator for you. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do number 2. Number 2 was y equals x squared plus 2x minus 1. Now if I'm going to solve this by factoring, so the first thing I need to do is find my roots. If I'm going to solve this by factoring, I need two numbers that multiply to -1 but add up to 2. Yep, I don't know what those two numbers are going to be. Okay, there are two numbers that exist. It will happen, but they're not going to be integers. So I'm going to go straight to quadratic formula. Okay, so I start working this out. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals a -1. X equals -b plus and minus the square root of 2b squared minus 4, A times C. All divided by 2 times A. Okay, go ahead and simplify. 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times -1, that ends up being a positive 8 over 2. Okay, feel free to pause the video at any point so you can make sure you are up on the calculations and you're with me there. So I've got two answers, -2 plus the square root of 8, excuse me, over 2. X equals -2 minus the square root of 8 over 2. Okay? So keep in mind, I'm trying to find the roots, where this crosses the x-axis. I just did that. It's -2, but all this right here, these are my two roots. However, I don't actually know where that's at on the x-axis. I can't point to -2 plus square root of 8 all divided by 2. So I need to convert that to a decimal. Okay, normally we don't do that. We like exact answers, but I need to have a rough idea of where this is going to be at. Okay? So I'm going to go to my calculator and type that in. All right? So you're at home, maybe you don't have a calculator, that's totally fine. I probably wouldn't expect you to. But you can go back to your friend Desmos here. And I'm on the graphing site here, so if I go to desmos.com, this is the home screen. And there's this little spot right here for calculators. It's for function and scientific. So if I click on the scientific calculator, let me go remind myself what it is I need to do. -2 plus square root of 8. So I am going to create a fraction. I'm going to do a -2 plus square root of 8. And then I'm going to divide that by 2, and I'm going to hit enter. I get this decimal of 0.414. All right, now we need to do the other answer, which was -2 minus the square root of 8, all divided by 2. Enter. -2.4. Okay, so let's round this. We're just trying to sketch a graph. It doesn't have to be perfect. get to a point. So I've got 0.4 and negative 2.4. Okay, so this is 0.4. This was net x equals negative 2.4. All right. So let me give myself a little bit more room. Some graph paper. I'll just make up a graph. Okay. So on your paper, on your graph, obviously you've got it set there on your paper. So question is, how do I graph 0.4? Well, if this is 0 and this is 1, this right here is halfway, so I'm just a little short of halfway, just estimating there. This is negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, so halfway would be negative 2.5, a little short of negative 2.5, and there would be my root, where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, vertex time. I found my roots. So vertex. X equals negative b all over 2a. That was the formula we learned. Okay, in the last problem I just did, I just went halfway between. We also talked about using the formula, but halfway in between to find my vertex, and I drew that line of symmetry. Well, now that I got these decimals, it's not as easy to go halfway between. I could, but we'll just use the formula to make sure we're exact. Okay? So remember your original equation was x squared plus 2x minus 1. So negative b would be negative 2 all over 2 times a, which is 1, negative 2 over 2. My x coordinate is going to be negative 1. Okay, let's go ahead and find the y-coordinate. Y equals negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 minus 1. And then I simplify this, and my answer is negative 2. Okay, so the coordinates of my vertex are x negative 1, y negative 2. Okay, so go to your graph and graph x negative 1, y negative 2. And on your graph paper on your assignment, the negative 2, or sorry, I should say the scale. Note the scale is a half. So negative 2 is a little ways down, and it's a little bit bigger than my picture here, but it's the same concept. Draw my parabola. I get something roughly like that. But the main thing is that my roots and my vertex are labeled. There. Okay, let's recap here real quick. In order to graph a parabola, my quadratic equation, I need to know the roots and I need to know the vertex. Okay, what I did down here. The roots I can find by factoring. That's how I did the first problem. I factored it. It was nice and easy. That factoring doesn't always work, only sometimes. I can also find the roots using the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula always works out for me. However, quadratic formula takes a little bit more time. Okay, so there's some pros and cons there. Speed and efficiency, this is more comfortable for us. Doesn't work all the time. Not as enjoyable to use, but always works. Okay? Once we find the roots, the x-axis, then we got to find the vertex. We talked about the line of symmetry on this problem, where that's going to be at, halfway between the roots. Let's see, we did, once we find the x-coordinate, the line of symmetry, we can plug it in to our original equation and find y. Okay, we also have this little formula. Again, formula always works, x equals negative b over 2a. It'll average the roots for us, so this always works to find the x-coordinate. Plug it in to the original equation and find y. Okay, that's all we need to do. Then sketch what our parabola is going to look like. Okay, so go ahead and finish number 3 and 4 at least. Feel free to go ahead and start on 5 and 6. We're going to finish these on Tuesday in class, but get a couple of these done. And really just need to practice finding the roots, finding the vertex, plotting those points. Okay, so keep in mind, I always say algebra is like problem solving 101. We're learning how to think, and I think these problems are a really good example of that. All right, enjoy your weekend, guys. We will see you on Tuesday.